Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're talking about something huge, a real seismic shift in the AI industry. It's like a high-speed collision that has just completely rewritten the rules of the game, and it's changed everything about where the real power lies. This one sentence, it pretty much captures the entire story we're going to unpack today. It points to this dramatic reversal of fortune, right? Where something that was once totally overlooked, maybe even seen as a burden, has suddenly become the most valuable thing on the planet. All right, so let's get right into it. To really get what's going on, we have to understand the core problem. For years, right, the AI industry was just chugging along, fueled by what everyone thought was an infinite resource, the internet. But guess what? That well has run dry. The industry has slammed right into what people are calling the data wall. Okay, so this timeline really shows you the exact moment things went completely off the rails. If you look, starting around 2018, the computer power for training AI just exploded. It started growing exponentially. But, and this is the key part, our ability to create new, good data to feed these super hungry models, it stayed frustratingly human, totally linear. And that created this massive gap, a chasm, really, that the whole industry is now falling into. And this number, 300 trillion, that's kind of a magic number here. That's what researchers think is the total amount of high-quality, human-made text out there on the public web. We're talking the good stuff, peer-reviewed papers, actual journalism, published books. And as of early 2026, that well is empty. This finite resource has been mined, aggressively. It's all been used up, gone. So what do you do when the well of human data runs completely dry? Well, developers thought they had a pretty clever solution. They said, hey, let's just use the AIs we have now to create tons of new data. Synthetic data, to train the next generation of AI. Sounds great, right? Like a perpetual motion machine for intelligence. Yeah, turns out, not so much. What this actually created was a catastrophic problem, something researchers are calling model collapse. See, instead of making smarter AIs, this closed-loop system ended up working like a bad photocopier. You make a copy of a copy of a copy. Each new generation of the model just gets a little bit worse, a little more distorted than the last one. The whole AI ecosystem basically starts poisoning itself from the inside out. And what's really wild is how this happens. It's almost like a form of digital dementia. First, the model starts forgetting the rare stuff, the outliers, the edge cases that are actually super important. Then it gets worse. It starts mixing up different facts, blending them together, which leads to those hallucinations we hear about. And finally, the whole thing just degrades until the output is, well, it's pretty much useless noise. And this right here, this illustrates the financial time bomb that was ticking under the surface. See, everyone used to think of AI like traditional software. You write the code once, you sell it forever, and the profits just scale infinitely. But that's just not how it works. Turns out, AI is more like a piece of factory equipment, a depreciating asset. It needs constant, expensive injections of real human data, like a fine-tuning tax, just to keep it from falling apart. Okay, so let's talk about the immediate fallout from all this. This collision of super high costs and really bad data, it triggered an absolutely brutal market correction. All those companies that bet the farm on the old way of thinking, that data was infinite and free, they got hit hard. First thing that happened was something called the wrapper crash. You had thousands of startups that were really just, well, they were thin software layers built on top of public APIs from places like OpenAI or Google. And overnight, their business models just became insolvent. Why? Because they had no unique data of their own. They didn't really offer any sustainable value, and now they're just collapsing. And hey, it wasn't just the startups. Even inside the huge corporations, AI projects were failing left and right. I mean, look at this. A staggering 75% of them are either totally canceled or just stuck in this place called pilot purgatory. They'd launch a pilot program, a proof of concept, and then discover that a generic AI without access to their deep internal data was just way too unreliable. It hallucinated way too often to be trusted with anything important. But you know how it goes. A crisis for some means a gold rush for others. The second the world realized that clean, human data was a finite resource, it triggered this frantic, high-stakes scramble to buy up the last remaining reserves. We're talking huge amounts of money. I mean, just look at this chart. It shows you the sheer scale of this explosion. The market for licensed datasets is projected to more than quadruple in less than a decade. That's a multi-billion-dollar industry that popped up seemingly out of nowhere. So here's the really crucial part. all of a sudden, media companies and academic publishers, the ones who'd been struggling against big tech for years, they woke up and realized they were sitting on a gold mine. They held the most valuable asset in the new economy. And now AI labs are signing these massive 9-figure deals just to get their hands on those edited, fact-checked archives to, ground their models back in reality. But here's the twist. While the publishers were getting all the headlines, the true, long-term winners in this new data economy, well, they're the last people you'd probably expect. And spoiler alert, they are not in Silicon Valley. The new kings of data are, get this, boring companies. Yeah, traditional legacy enterprises. We're talking about banks, hospital systems, giant logistics firms, manufacturers, the kind of companies that have spent the last 50 years just quietly collecting decades and decades of their own private, offline, human-verified data about how their business actually works. It turns out they are protected by what people are now calling a data moat. Think about it. This data is impossible to just scrape off the internet. It's super rich in all those weird, rare edge cases, the exact things synthetic models forget first. And most importantly, it's grounded in physical reality. It captures all the unwritten rules of how their specific business actually functions in the real world. Okay, let's make this really concrete. Take a place like the Mayo Clinic. They're using their huge historical archive of patient EKG data to train a specialized AI. And this model, it can spot life-threatening heart conditions that some generic model trained on Wikipedia articles could never, ever hope to find. Or how about a global shipping company like Maersk? They have decades of super detailed data on everything. Port delays, customs issues, weather patterns, you name it. That lets them train a predictive model that gives them a competitive advantage that is basically impossible to beat. Because, let's be honest, you just can't fake 30 years of real-world supply chain data. And you better believe these legacy giants know what they have now. They're locking down this advantage. They're putting no training clauses in all their vendor contracts, making it illegal for anyone to use their operational data to train outside models. They're building their own sovereign AI systems to keep this incredibly valuable asset under lock and key. So, all of this leaves us with a pretty provocative final thought. We've seen how running out of public data led to this scary threat of model collapse, and that in turn created a whole new class of winners, these old-school companies sitting on decades of real-world information. In a world that is about to be flooded with infinite, cheap, synthetic content, it turns out that verified, historical, human reality has never been more valuable. So the real question is, what's the true price of that reality?